we go. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I don't know why our heads are cut off. Hi, everybody. We'll just give you a few minutes to jump on live with us here. If you're new, then welcome. Thanks for being here with us. My name is Lindsay. This is Jess. We're here every Tuesday night at 7:30, and we are answering questions that were sent in by you guys. Tonight, the question that we're answering is, how do I know when my horse is at his limit, or how do I know when to quit pushing my horse? And this one was sent in by Jess, so thank you, different Jess, for sending this question in.
Jess or Jeff?
Jess. Yeah, Jess.
He must be a good guy.
She
must be a good one.
Yes. Okay, so if you lose us partway through, then try refreshing your screen. If you want to catch the replay, you'll be able to watch the replay without any interruptions. If you want the replay to be sent directly to your inbox, then you can do that by signing up for our email list, which you can do at hayescofellperformancehorses.ca/subscribe. I'll post that link afterwards when we're done here. And if you want to send us a question, then you can submit a question to our email at hayescofellph@gmail.com. We'll add that to our list and try to make sure that we cover that for you. I see a few people are on. Hi, Barb. Hi, John. Looks like a few people are jumping on now. So, this question, Jess and I had to kind of go through this a little bit because her question was kind of a complicated one, and we had to talk about it a little bit to figure out exactly what she was, to figure out exactly how we could help her the best, I guess, with her question. So her question stemmed from having seen before other riders who had sent their horses away for training, and the horses coming back improved, the rider not doing any improvement, not taking any lessons or working to improve themselves, and then the horses coming back and the rider not being able to make use of the training and confusing the horse and kind of getting into a bad situation there. And her perspective on it was, first push the horses too far and seeing that the horse was past its limits, and also wanting to be a responsible horse person herself and to know when she's not doing the same thing herself, because sometimes it's easier to see in somebody else than it is to feel yourself. So I hope that makes sense to you. Basically what we want to try to cover is how do you know when to quit when your horse is at their limit, physical limit,
I think the hardest part about answering this question is everybody has the entitlement to say what they believe is the right time, or too much or too little. And we see it at horse shows all the time. We see it in the training barns. We see it when people talk to us about trainers, and I'm sure people talk about us to other trainers. Is everybody says, well, they should have done this and they should have done that. To me, the problem with that is you usually didn't know the back. You should push a horse, or how far they shouldn't. And everybody's always right when they're not sitting in the saddle. It's always easier to watch from the stands and tell us what we're doing wrong. But aside from that, just getting into the horse part of it, I think the physical one, the biggest one is if you're getting tired, you're not teaching a horse. Once that horse is so tired and you just feel them where they're mentally checking out because they're tired, well then you're not going to be able to teach that horse anything anyways. You're done for the day. You got to go for a walk and just get away from them. Mental is, I think, a different part of it, because just like people, and you haven't done this a lot, even if you have done it a lot, you're going to mess up. You're going to, push some days maybe a little too hard, and other days, you think you should push harder, and you never get it perfect. But physically, the biggest thing is you need to stop if you feel them starting to get, and I don't mean tired as in like, okay, I got the fresh road off them, now I can go get some stuff done. But once they feel like their legs are getting dumb, or dumb out, that's what I call it. But once their legs are getting tired and you're beating yourself up, that's when a horse is going to hurt themselves. They're going to pull muscles. They're going to, hurt tendons. They're going to hurt ligament. They're going to hurt stuff that you're not getting them back from. You're not going to gain anything. And then mentally, the biggest thing is, just like a person, you have to be able to read if you're riding into them kind of hard. Are they pushing back on you because they're being stubborn, or are they pushing back on you because they don't understand? And I think that's the biggest thing is, if a horse is just kind of being like, oh, I don't want to work today. That's all, I'm only going to give you a 6 out of 10 today. That stuff you can ride into hard. And then if they're just flustered because they just don't understand, well, then you need to back it off. And when you're at a horse show or you're at a barn of, whatever, you'll see people mess up all the time. Nobody's perfect. So it's just a matter of, you got to know those horses. And that's a hard thing to evaluate when you're watching somebody else ride. I didn't answer a thing there, did I?
You answered a lot of things, I think.
I don't know that there's a right answer because
it's a really hard question to answer.
You're dealing with a personality. You're dealing with a physical fitness level of another animal.
Yeah.
A horse.
How do you know? You don't even know when you're super, super, super experienced, well coached, or it takes an awful lot to be able to make those decisions. I think for most people riding, they don't know that. They don't have the skills to know when their horse is at their max, and that's one of the things that's so important, one of the reasons why it's so important to get professional help when you get into an issue with something like that. But I also think that for most people, they never get the most out of it. Like, I think what Jess is saying is, should somebody have quit because their horse could only, Jess doesn't really do reining, but let's say for the sake of the reiners, like, my horse can only do a 0 spin. This is the best I'm gonna get for my spin, and I just need to quit here. My horse is always gonna, turn his head a little bit to the outside when I turn him, so this is where I need to quit, and that's as good as my horse can do. I feel like most non-pros don't have the skill to know that, and that the onus is more on the development of the rider. That you can't really say, oh, this is all my horse is capable of, so this is all I'm gonna do. It's more important to continue the development of the rider so that the rider can bring out more in the horse. So it's not necessarily that you reach the maximum for what your horse can tolerate or what your horse physically can do. It's that you need to develop that further, because I don't know how much you can really say there is a limit on that.
Well, and I think
there are some horses that are never going to be able to turn a +1.5, but it doesn't mean that you can't improve what you do have there.
And most of the things that I see were like at horse shows, and there'll be lots of times, like anybody who's rode with me at a horse show, all of a sudden, we'll be working on something and I'm just like, hey, you're done.
Yeah.
Your horse gave you that effort. He gave you that try. You need to be done so that he comes back out with that effort and try again tomorrow. But at that point, we've usually already worked on something. And how I always like to approach it is, I want to start out nice with a horse. I want to work into a bit of a good stuff. I want to work into a bad part with my horse. I want to pick a little bit of a fight. I want to mentally make that horse take a little bit there. And then I want to bring them out on a good spot.
Yeah.
So once I teach them that you can get into a little trouble and I'm going to bring you out of it, I think every day, and when they get in trouble when they're showing, they come out and go, okay, I got in a little trouble there, but I could fix that. I can help this. 9 times out of 10, when we see it at a horse show, let's say we're in the warm-up pen, we watch some people, and you'll see some people going, that person needs to just quit riding. Like their horse is frustrated, he's done. It wasn't that the horse is in a problem where he needs to be done. The person needs to explain it to the horse better, and you could have a much longer ride and get a lot more done. Horses can take a lot of riding if they understand the job at hand
If they're getting a
and
break.
it doesn't
Yeah.
mess up, confuse their brains. And it's not all of them. There's good and better horses, and some are better than others, but the good ones, especially in the reiners and the cow horses and the ranch riding, it's amazing how much they can put into their brain in a ride as long as they know what the end game is. If they know, okay, today we're working, maybe I want them to stop a little deeper or whatever. It's amazing how much they can actually do with, physically bringing them up and then giving them a break and bringing them up, bringing them back. But if they understand the job, they can actually be rode usually way more than people think. A lot of people at the horse shows will, oh, my horse is done because he's getting a little flustered. Flustered is you have a problem, not the horse. Just because you couldn't, and that's where you need to get a trainer, a good trainer or a good coach, so that you can give a very good explanation of that horse, what you wanted him to do, and you can get way more out of your ride. When so many people, like they go to a big event or they go to a show that's maybe a little better than what they're used to, and they see somebody riding the horses, and they go, man, that guy there, he rides them horses really hard. The thing I look at is, though, the better trainers, the better horse people can ride them fairly hard, but the tails don't swish, the ears don't pin. Them horses are working, and if they understand their job, they come back saying, yes, sir, let's do some more, let's do some more. It's when you get them flustered. So it's not about how long, how hard, how aggressive that ride is. It's how much does that horse understand? And every horse is an individual. And I think that's especially in our barn where we have some cow-bred horses, and then we have some more cold, reiners and, the hotter cow horse stuff in there with a little different, where their line is of tempers and all that kind of stuff are. And you just have to know them horses. I have a really cool 3-year-old right now that a couple times a week, I'll actually ride him twice a day, but a different type of ride. I won't ride him as hard once, I ride him twice, and I just find he accepts that better. And I think that's something you just have to realize is what type of learning does that horse like, so that you can ride him more and he understands it more. And it's not that he's a very nice horse, he's actually quite a cool horse, but he just does better if he has breaks in between those riding so that he can understand it. Now, if I go to a smaller horse show and somebody sees me ride this horse twice a day, I'm going to get questioned on, oh my gosh, that guy's riding the horse twice a day. Yada, yada. They don't look at, but that's what the horse needs to be rode that way so that he can do well in the show pen. And I think that's so important, is just, knowing them horses. If you don't fluster their brain up, a horse can actually ride quite a bit. And they can do a lot of neat work as long as their brain doesn't get flustered.
So if you're going to summarize that.
I don't know how to summarize it. I have no idea. It's a feel.
What did you say right before we went live? You said if they're flustered in their brain, like if they don't understand, then you quit, and if they're just mad, then you keep going.
Yeah, like if they're just mad and, just like a person, they come out and they're just in a bad
Yeah.
mood. My big thing is if they come out in a bad mood, they only want to give me so much. Like I hate a horse that doesn't have a yes sir, yes ma'am mentality. So if they're just in that piggy mood where, they get rode hard. If they're flustered, I might ride one for, 10 minutes, show him that footwork where he thinks he's a superstar, and then, we're done for the day. And you got to know whether they're flustered or they're mad if they're not doing what you want.
Flustered meaning like they don't understand, like they're getting worried because they don't understand.
Yeah, they just don't know where to
Yeah.
put their feet. They just don't
Yeah.
know what, like, you're just not getting across as a clear message. But if they go no to me, I'll go ride them things pretty hard. I don't think I have ever hid behind that fact. I have no problem riding one hard. If they say no to me or they say no to one of my customers, I'm going to get on that thing and I'm going to make it go, yes, sir. If they're flustered, I'm going to slow it right down and I'm going to do a whole bunch of slow work and step them over till they understand it. And I think when we get to shows, I think we see that a lot where a horse might be distracted. Distracted by all the stuff going on. Perfect example I'm thinking of is Taylor's old mare. Here's a mare that had been shown all over the place. She'd get to a horse show and she's no broke mare and she would snort like she'd never been to a horse show in her life. And the young girl that showed her with us, her job was to go just trot that thing for the first 5 minutes. And then we had a brain from that horse. If she tried to work on it the first 5 minutes, it didn't work. And then she could go ride that horse and show it a couple times a day, and it worked. But you just have to, and then lots of people would come up to me and, I don't know how many times I heard, oh, you guys ride that horse twice a day. Yeah, but we don't have to ride her into the ground. We just have to, she has to be out of the stall. She has to be seeing the stuff. And that's knowing whether or not they're just pigs or if they're flustered.
Just pigs.
Well, call them what they are. If they need,
If they're mad, if they're just mad.
if they're
Or
mad,
if
they're a pig.
flustered. Yeah. Shoot, I wanted to say something and I forgot what it was. If you guys have any questions, you are more than welcome to leave them here. We're kind of just chatting on and on, but if you guys have questions that you have about certain things that your horses are maybe doing, and you're not sure whether you should keep going or not, then definitely drop those in the comment box and we can try to get those answered. I think, so for all of the Momentum members that are on here, there's a good guide inside of Momentum. You're picking your hands on the screen.
Well, it
Drive me
wasn't my
nuts.
nose.
Drive
I
me
thought We were
nuts.
doing pretty good here.
For all the Momentum members, we do have a guide inside of Momentum, and it's been a while since we had this one, so you guys might want to check back into that. And it's about, it's called the Reiner's Work Week, and basically it explains how we structure the rides throughout the week to get the most out of the horse's brain power, and basically building up to the most intense work sessions and then tapering off at the end of the week or at the end of the consecutive rides that you have. And I think that strategies like that, your routine and your system and your strategies are really important as far as being a non-professional rider trying to do as much as you can on your own. Having those kinds of things, having that kind of thing set up, knowing when to release to reward your horse, and doing it frequently, I think is important for building their tolerance for more. So, for people that are fairly early on in the riding game, we're giving lots of breaks for the horses. We're doing a little bit of work. It's confusing for the horses to understand what the rider's saying. So once the horse does what they're asked, we're giving a nice big break. As people get more and more advanced with their riding, then we can give fewer breaks. But then the same thing comes for the green horses, or not even for a green horse, but for a horse that's been confused about something and the horse that's trying to learn something new. A lot of people are shocked when they come for a lesson here. They think that they're going to have to work so hard, and they're going to be dripping in sweat, and they're going to be, whatever. But a lot of times we'll show them how to do something, explain how to do something, and as soon as they get it, we're like, okay, quit. And a lot of people are like, what? Stop riding? That's it? That's all you want me to do? And we'll have them go back and do it again. It's usually not a one-time deal of, like one thing. But sometimes it's just a matter of getting a few repetitions where the horse is doing the right thing and then moving on to something else and trying to get a few repetitions where the horse is doing the right thing. And then that's that for that lesson. And then it's up to the rider to continue that until they can get back for their next ride. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense? Don't you think that when people come, a lot of times they think they're just going to have to work so stinking hard and then, show them how to do something and like, okay, quit. And they're like, oh. And then other times,
like to work them really
and then
hard.
other times, yeah. And then other times they come and they're like, oh man.
I like it if they can't walk out of here. I like it when they sit there and their eyes are crossed and they're going, what the heck?
Whatever, you do not.
But I think the biggest thing is like, yeah, you can't keep going at it over and over and over again. You got to get it, back away.
And you can't keep
going.
going.
Come at it, back away.
Yeah, like one thing people like to do is just keep going without giving the horse a break. Like you can't just be like, oh, I got that. Let me do it again and again and again. You have to do it and give them a break and then come back and do it again and then give them a break. Like you can't just keep going. If you don't give them a break, they have no incentive to keep coming back and working for you. You have to make sense to the horse, get the response you want, give them a break.
I had a guy one time explained to me that the horses learn as much in the stalls at night when they're thinking about what you did through the day as when you're actually on them.
Yeah.
And I don't think explaining it as you do it once and they get it and you quit, but you do it a few times where they understand it's the repetition. They got that over and over again. Then they can quit. And
I don't mean quit like get off and put your horse away. I mean like ask for it, get the response, then stop asking for it, let your horse veg out, then do it again. Because I think a lot of people get stuck in that, especially with like, getting their horse to collect or bridle up or, whatever word you want to use for that, where people are like, oh, did I get it? And then they just want to hold their horse there over and over and over again. It's like that horse is tired. That horse mentally and physically can't handle doing that for that long. You have to give them a break and then come back.
And then the horse doesn't figure out that there's the end game where that's what I wanted.
Yes.
There's my end game. There's that clear
This
cue
is
of
why I do it.
want you to work your butt off for me and then I will release to you. Come back and work your butt off for me, then I will get back to you. And it has to be very clear that way. Ride them harder, but make it clear.
Yeah, and get help. Like,
I feel like I need help every day.
you do.
I do.
Yeah.
And my wife tells me I need help every day.
It's fine for us to sit here and say,
We
get
joke
help,
about that, but how many times do we
but-
video a horse and me and you will watch it, or
We
I'll
help
tell
each
you to
oth-
come out
yes.
and I say, hey, watch this horse, or tell me
What's
or
this
hop
horse
on this.
doing in
and-
this? Yeah.
Yeah, we do it
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah.
Or I go ride with some of my friends too, and
You don't
pick
have
their
any
brains.
friends.
They say I give them
They
beer,
charge you
so
money. They charge you money. And then
I
call
give
you
them
friends.
beer. They say they're my friends. Good enough.
Yeah. Gail's saying it's hard to balance not repeating something too much for the horse, but getting enough practice in for yourself. Totally, Gail. That's a really hard balance. And I think the best thing as far as that goes is learning multiple tools for the same, getting towards the end product, so that you're not just doing the same exercise over and over and over again. We just did, again, inside of Momentum, we just did a big series on counter canter. And it was cool because it was like all the different ways, not all the different ways, 8 different ways to use counter canter. So it wasn't just like, can you get into a counter canter and do a figure 8? It's like there are all these different formations, all these different ways to use counter canter. They're all to get to the same purpose. It's all to get, you're always looking for the same thing with every single one of these, but different ways to go about it. And then, you could even, if your aim is to improve your lead changes and you start by working on your counter canter, you can do all these different formations in counter canter. And then you can also work on your lead changes by doing side pass, by doing, there's all these different things, all these different tools that you can build, and you can be working on all of them to aim towards the same goal. I think that's the thing, is as the rider learning so many different tools that you're not just repeating the same dang thing over and over again. You're not just going around and around and around and around the arena, or cutting the arena in half and doing circles. Anything else you want to add?
I think another one thing about riding too much or too little is understanding too what the environment is you're riding from a physical point of view. If it's super cold out, I trot a lot more and warm them up. If I'm at a show that has deep ground, I make sure I don't lope maybe as much as I maybe do at home. If it's super hot out, realizing that, I'm a big one. I like to ride them hard, but maybe then every once in a while, I might send send somebody that works for me in with the horse and say, hey, just go give that thing a drink, let them sit in the shade for 5 minutes, and then bring them back out to me after. Just, understanding that, like, you can't say, oh, I ride my horse 45 minutes a day. Well, I can ride a horse for 45 minutes and then not break a sweat, or I can ride one for 2 minutes and have him dripping in sweat. The same as your own body, you have to realize where that is, and it will change. And then it'll also change mentally. Why is my horse in a bad mood today? You have to evaluate their soundness, like I ride my horses differently on Monday than I do on Thursdays. You just have to be that horse person to realize what they need at what point.
I think, like, going back to Gail's comment, which was about the balance between knowing how much to practice, being able to practice enough for herself, for the rider, and not overdo it with the horse. The other part of that is one of the reasons why we talk so much about fitness out of the saddle, right? Like, you don't want to be, you will get fit from riding, but you don't want to be getting fit necessarily, or be developing your balance necessarily while you're riding. Those things will develop while you're riding, but the more you can do outside of the saddle to develop your endurance, your strength, your balance, your coordination, and your understanding of what it is that you're supposed to be doing, the more you can do that outside of the saddle, the more effective you'll be in the saddle, so the less you'll have to repeat stuff. Josie's saying something here. Josie's saying, I think as non-pros who can't ride every day, we can try to cram too much on the days we do ride, which can overload both the horse and the rider. Yeah, I think that's totally true. I think what happens for a lot of people is they don't ride all week, and then they come in to ride on a Saturday, and they don't ride like it's a Monday ride, right? Where the horse has been off for a few days and needs like kind of just a refresher. They get in there and they're like, I got a show coming up in a couple months, and I got to get my horse fit, and I got to work on my spins, and I got to, that's
or even
that's
just
hard.
coming out of, like, for us, anybody, like, we're in Ontario and we had quarantine for the last month, and we just opened up, and the first 2 lessons I gave today was breaking it down to a very, like, this is what I want you to work on. And it was nowhere near as advanced as what we did when we were done quarantine.
Yeah.
But bringing a horse back mentally and physically, and a person back mentally and physically, every ride will be a little different. You still got to push yourself and the horse, but you don't want to overload it. But if it's clear, like, so the reason I brought both of them back the first thing this morning was, okay, just concentrate on, like, how do you move their belly over, push their belly over, push their belly, and that's pretty much all we worked on 2 horses. And the horses were sweating. I think that's a big thing when you don't get to ride every day. Don't try to do every maneuver of a reiner or every maneuver of a ranch horse or a cow horse. Find that one maneuver where you say, okay, I'm going to work on this. Start, like, this is how I'm going to work. And that's my thing on Mondays too, when the horses have been off for Saturday, Sunday, or Sunday, depending on the week. I don't want to work on every maneuver. I want to really pick on one so that it's very simple. The horse understands what I'm after. It's very simple. This is what we're going to do today. And I think that's so important to keep them from being flustered.
Okay, I think we've talked a lot about that. Hopefully we've given some things for you to think about, maybe some things for you to implement into your next ride, or maybe you need to call your coach, your horse trainer, and schedule some time to get in for a lesson. We also said we were going to do a new tag announcement. So those of you that are on our email list already know about this. Those of you in Momentum already know about this because this is where this came from. Our Momentum members are anxious to get doing some more ranch riding and some ranch trail, and asked for Jess's recommendations for ropes. So we are excited to now be offering our ropes. Do you want to grab it off of the corner of the chair behind you? Your left shoulder. We're excited to now be offering these ropes. We've actually had them for a long time and we just haven't had them on our online shop, but we're excited to have these available for you guys now. This is what Jess recommends for beginners if you're just learning how to rope, for those of you that want to do the ranch trail, and anybody who wants to learn how to drag logs and stuff off horses. Do you want to talk to them a little bit about what that is and why, just real quick?
So the question we got asked from
Jen.
You know, you go into a tack store, there's a whole bunch of ropes. The problem with the whole bunch of ropes, if you don't know what type of roping, you know, so many ranch ropes, team ropes, head and heeling ropes, calf ropes, there's so many different types of them. In the ranch trail, which is getting to be fairly popular, you're not going to rope livestock, but you have to drag some pole, you know, drag a pole, do some little stuff with it, getting the horses ready. So when I start dragging stuff or helping people start drag stuff, I actually like the calf ropes because they're a little softer. They're a little more flimsy than the team ropes, so they're easier for people to dally, which is how you drag it, you wrap it around your horn. And they're a lot more forgiving. If you're just learning how to rope, you're going to hit yourself, you're going to hit your horse. Not that you try to, but it's just fact of nature you're going to. And they're just a little more forgiving. We've always kept ropes, have for years, but we just never really push them because a lot of our customers, you know, we don't rope. But now with the ranch trail coming in, you know, we've got a bunch of them here. They're a softer rope than a team rope. Most of the ones at a tack store are going to be team ropes. So they're a little softer, a little more flexible, but they have the correct weight. And that's something that a lot of people, like if you don't know ropes, if you go into like the TSC or something, they have these cheap ropes and they're real light.
Who want to have a more neutral color for when you're showing.
And we're going to have some ranch trail clinics this spring.
We haven't announced that yet. Well, we are, but I guess you can say that. We're going to do some fun stuff this spring.
Everybody forget what I just said.
Yeah, spilling the beans over here. Okay, so those are available for pre-order. If you would like one, then please just send me a message and let me know. And I can help you figure out what size you need.
We didn't do a shout out. Can I do a shout out?
You can do a shout out. Yeah.
I would like to do a shout out to Daphne.
Okay, yeah.
Who was a lady that has taken some clinics and has, I've been riding a horse for, and she's had a bit of a health scare. And really nice lady. We hope she...
Momentum member. She always shares all of our posts, likes everything. She's usually on here watching these.
She's a fun, smiley lady.
Always
and
very
hopefully
supportive of everybody in the Cut the Chaos Challenge and around the barn. And yeah, shout out to Daphne. Hope she's doing okay.
Yeah. Very good.
Okay, thanks for being here with us tonight, guys, and we will see you next week on Tuesday at 7:30. If you have questions, send them in at hayescofelph@gmail.com. And again, if you want the replay delivered to your inbox, then you can do that by signing up for our email list, which you can do by hitting the blue button on our cover page if you're finding us on Facebook, or you can find it in our the link in our bio on Instagram. I'll also post it in here in the caption text. Okay,